So my friends, it's finally happening. We're at adidas' made-to-measure factory in Scheinfeld, which is the factory where they make all the boots for their pro players. So Jude Bellingham, Lamine Yamal, David Beckham, Lionel Messi, but today, also yours truly. I've been looking forward to this day for so long because they're actually going to make me a predator based on my foot shape with my wishes for the boot. And they're gonna do it right here, right now, and you're coming with me. But the journey starts, or should I say continues, in this room, where once again we have Patrick from Athlete Servicing, who, if you saw the previous video, actually took my measurements in Athlete Servicing in Herzogenaurach. Yeah. You've taken all that data, and you've processed it, you've looked at it, and basically you have made it ready for the guys here in the factory to actually build the boot.
So like you said, obviously last time you were in the lab, right, we scanned your feet, and once you went away, obviously we had a closer look at the data that we have from you, and a couple of things I would just like to point out. So this is what we call a foot last overlay. So we just put your foot and the last that we used to build the shoe on top of each other in 3D, which gives us a very good understanding how to interpret your feedback, really. If you remember, one of the things that you wanted was like a little bit more room in the toe area, right? If you look at this perspective here, it kind of seems strange that you would need this, right? Because if you just look at this, you would say, there's enough room. But then when we look at it from the top, different thing becomes apparent. Now you have a rather wide forefoot/wide toe area. So once your toes are in the shoe, they kind of get probably compressed, move on top of each other a little bit. So that could explain why you feel this once you're inside the shoe, which again also shows nicely what I told you the last time. We can't use only the data to make the boots. We always need that interaction with the athlete, talk to them, get their feedback, get their perception of things. Because you tell me what I need to do, the data tells me a little bit how should I do it.
Sure.
The other thing that we spoke about last time we were there was your heel area, right? A little bit softer to accommodate for that Haglund's deformity that you have a little bit going on. But also what's very interesting is the general shape of your heel, which is very flat. Which also explains why you probably feel a little bit more comfortable with a soft heel area, because then it makes it easier for the shoe to just adapt to your heel, right? With a heel shape like yours, it makes sense that the heel just is a little bit more soft and accommodates your heel shape a little bit better. So that's a couple of things that really stand out when we did this analysis, and which just gives us additional information to then tell the guys here in Scheinfeld, okay, what exactly do we need to do on the shoes? So really specifying this so they kind of get the recipe from us to then go into the production and kick it off.
All right, but so the first step here is the last, preparing the last, which is this big foot shape that the boot will be shaped around. And that is what Ike is doing. He's got here, 15 years at the factory. He's done a degree in orthopedic shoemaking, which means that he knows a lot about what he's doing. And what he told me is that they're essentially going in to trim the last a little bit around the heel to make it fit my foot shape better, and also apply this little leather piece to actually ensure that I get the space, the volume in the forefoot that I need. So when they put the upper basically around the shoe, it's going to take the shape of the last with my little modifications. Now that the last is ready, it's time to look at the upper and customize that to my needs. And what Lucian is doing here is basically to go in and ensure that everything on the upper fits the new last. So what he does here is to disassemble the upper, which sounds counterintuitive, but what he's doing is basically to take out the original foam package, which is 8 millimeters and 3 in the back, and then make a new one, basically cut a new foam package that is 10 millimeters to ensure that it sits a little bit closer around my heel to lock it in place. What he's also done is cut a new strober piece here, because since the last is now a little bit slimmer, the upper also needs to be slimmer and sit tighter around my foot. And finally, he's ensured that I asked for an extra lace hole, a punch hole. So he's made little pieces to reinforce the upper, and also cut me a new heel liner to cover that extra punch hole. So basically, they take the upper apart so they can build kind of a new one for me. But the thing is that then the upper needs to be put back together, and that's what Andrea here does. She basically takes all the components, she glues them, puts them back together, and then she's gonna stitch everything back so it looks like the upper that was before, which is the regular upper, but just with my modifications to them. So if you hold up the two uppers together and you don't know, you probably couldn't tell, but this is where the magic happens. And you think, they're just putting the components together. But Andrea has been doing this for 40 years. And I just heard that she had her anniversary the other day. Andrea, herzlichen Glückwunsch. This is what expertise looks like, right? what happens next is that we start the assembly process, and that is basically putting the boot together. So what Ollie does here, he's been here for 34 years, by the way, doing just this. Again, we're talking experts here, but he's basically putting the insole board in the upper on the last here. As you can see, we're already moving on. What he's then doing is that he's preparing the upper to be stretched around the last. He puts it in this machine, he makes it a little bit warmer so it stretches more. That takes about 10 seconds. And then we're moving over to the beast behind us, where Ollie is going to stretch the upper around the last to basically give it the foot shape, the boot shape that we all know. And then we stretch. Yep. And if you're thinking, Star Wars Darth Vader getting his helmet on, that's about the sound you get there. Boom. Now it went from just being like flat and having this undefined shape to actually looking like a football boot with my foot shape. And then as you can see, Ollie applies a little bit of glue to take the last pieces basically and make them ready to come in over or under technically on the last. But the thing is that when you see the big machine over there that kind of folds the boot around the last, normally you would see the entire front part of the boot being folded around the last, but here, because everything is so custom, sometimes the lasts are really wide, they do the last part here manually. They do it by hand to make sure that it gets the perfect fit. The machine can't do that because there's so much variation, but Detlef, who's been here for almost 40 years, well, he can do that. Better than any machine. He's done a lot. I don't know how many thousands of pairs of shoes he's built, but again, it's the small details, right? But this step is probably one of the most important in the entire assembly process, and that is Detlef basically heating up the sole to then sit down and then actually draw the lines off the sole on the upper, which means that the other people in the next steps can actually see where they need to buff down the upper and also apply glue so the sole sits correctly. Because if he messes up, basically, everything from here on out will be done wrong. So the sole can sit crooked and the boot can be off balance, and all the hard work that's been done previously is more or less pointless. And then what happens here is basically that on the sole and the underside of the upper, they apply what is called a primer, basically a chemical that basically allows the glue to soak into the material, which means that when you put them together later, it really sticks. And then one of the final pieces of the assembly is basically putting the sole on. So first, the uppers go in the oven here, then the soles are put on and finally pressed together to make sure that, well, everything sticks and the soles won't fall off. And because of all the other steps, they're not gonna. After that, they go through a little bit of finishing. They go on a cryo belt to make sure that everything is nice and cool. Then they're finished up to look good, and then we're gonna go somewhere else. But it is not a custom boot without getting them actually customized. So I have the JayMike logo, I have the Unisport logo, and then the names or the first letters of my wife and my children, because, why not? Why not? I mean, we're here. They're just gonna heat them on to the boots, and then they're done. Then we're going to try them on.
Three hours later.
Hey Jay, your boots. They're done. I should probably go and try them on. Thank you very much, man. You're welcome. So, the moment of truth. I am very excited and also a little bit nervous, to be fair. I'm gonna try out the boots. But the thing is that to ensure that I get the best possible fit, Adidas have actually made two options for me. One where they made a little bit more volume throughout the entire toe box, and one where they only raised it around the big toe, just to make sure that there aren't any details that are left not considered. So I'm just gonna put them on, basically, and see what it feels like. And this is... What? Holy, that is a very, very different sensation than I'm used to in a Pred. Wow. Okay, so this is actually wild. My usual experience in the Pred is that it fits really well, but it is tight in the forefoot, and I do have that little bit of extra space around my ankle. And that is significantly better in this. I mean, there's actually, a a good amount of space. I think the one with the, the wide toe box might actually be on the cozy side for me now, and the one with just a big toe, that's a perfect fit. Like legit, I can't think of a much better shape for my foot right now, which makes sense. So, wow, I can't wait to go and play in these. This is, this is ridiculously good. So that is basically the process of getting a custom-made pair of boots at the Scheinfeld made-to-measure factory. And it is, it's been really fun to see how they've just basically made the boots in front of us, in front of our eyes, and I get to try it right now and actually see the difference in the fit. Huge bucket list item just ticked off, and big heartfelt thank you to the entire team behind the scenes making the boots. It's yeah, it's absolutely nuts, this. So let me know what you think of the whole thing in the comment section right down below. If you want a pair of Preds for yourself, well, you can buy them in the link to Unisport right over there. I'm gonna be back with a playtest, of course, to let you know what they feel like. If you want to see that, make sure you subscribe to the channel with the notifications on. And with those words, I'm just gonna sit here and just admire these for a couple of seconds. And with that, I'll be signing off. Cheerio. Wow.